Hello, this is Anthony Pensa, and this is the Love of Wisdom podcast. This is my first official video podcast, and as you guys may or may not know, I have recorded podcasts in the past, and my podcast is called The Love of Wisdom, and it deals with specifically philosophy and the importance of philosophy in the real world, and how philosophy is used to help intellectuals and people across the world understand deep philosophical issues and wisdom and knowledge to help them in their daily life and pursuits. You can find me on Instagram at the Love of Wisdom 424, no spaces. That's TheLoveWisdom 424, and Facebook at the Love of Wisdom. I am also on Patreon at the Love of Wisdom. And if you'd like to hear any more philosophy episodes in the future, please let me know. I'm uploading this directly here now onto YouTube. One thing I wanted to say is Patrons are great for people to contribute to more podcasts and other businesses to succeed. So if you are interested in doing a Patreon account, please do that. I'm using Patreon because I need financial backing for and you guys as a contribution at Patreon to focus on assisting the public, intellectuals, and institutions in seeing the value of philosophy in our daily lives and our society. And it's important that we use ancient and modern wisdom from around the world to make us happier, healthier, and more successful in life, business, relationships, and everything else that binds us as human beings on this planet and in this universe. In today's podcast, I'll be covering a famous philosopher, Chinese philosopher named Confucius. And I'll be talking about his famous work called the Analects. Now, Confucius was born September 28, 1551 BC in the state of Lu during the Zhou dynasty in ancient China, in an area that's now known as Shandong province in modern-day China. And Confucius, aside from being a philosopher, he was also a teacher, editor, and politician during what was the spring and autumn period of the Chinese history. He began what's now known as, I'm a little tired. Confucianism, which emphasizes personal governmental morality, correctness of social relationships, justice, and sincerity. Much of its philosophy is practiced in modern China still to this day and across the world. He taught that strong family loyalty, respect of elders by their children, husbands by their wives, and ancestor veneration should be practiced in society. In his book, The Analects, he talks about a conversation between various philosophers, such as philosopher Yu, Zhang, and the Master. And he talks about and discusses how the Master himself teaches how the importance of men take to pleasure, constantly studying and preserving the application to virtues. He discusses about virtue and the need that someone is of complex virtue who finds no displeasure, and people who don't acknowledge that form of virtue. In his first book, Xiao Er, the Master speaks about respecting the elders and observing the funeral rites for dead parents and following virtue into excellence by seeking to be upright with the government. We also have the philosopher Yu, who mentions in the 12th chapter of the first book that people ought to agree to what is right and spoken good. Men most then adhere to what is right and speak good, shown what is proper to keep away from shame and disgrace of his or her life. It's important that we be taught to exercise what it is that we know to be good, to be given a sense of morality regardless of our belief system, so that we can not produce shame and disgrace to our family and to our friends and people we know. And we should, of importance, rely on parties in which one individual, ourselves and others, can confide and speak with an individual who's comfortable to act as guides and masters for the person. As people, we should seek complete future outside of gratifying just our own appetites. We should be earnest in seeking, careful in speech. We should be frequenting the company of men, practicing by principle or rectify when needed, and love to learn. In the second book, Wei Cheng, Confucius writes that the Master allows the people who are led by laws and uniformity seek today, much as with many societies today, to flee from punishment. We should try to avoid punishment by having no sense of shame. If people were trained to live a virtuous life and uniformly sought the rules of propriety, they would have a sense of shame and they would become good. Book 3 and 4 of the Analects identifies further that necessary qualities of the virtuous man. Confucius speaks about how in Book 4, Li San, that to be truly virtuous, men must not practice wickedness. And what is wickedness, right? Wickedness is any evil, any mistrust, any deeds, any problems and causations that cause negative aspects to result from living a virtuous lifestyle, a life that's high in wisdom. People today from all around the world, I hear, always want to be rich, famous, of status, prestigious in their craft, their skill set, have a dream job. But what about wisdom? Why don't they seek wisdom? Life experience is far greater than simple material wealth. Sure, many have millions or even billions of dollars, but does that bring some sort of satisfaction and pleasure that only lasts a short period? Right? People become sad, lonely, depressed, become separated from the world, from their families, all because of the desire and the need for material wealth and gain. Our society constantly perpetuates this. When I went to church, I was raised in a Christian household. I learned the value of being humble and content with the things that I had. Both my parents were born in a communist country and had very little. With whatever we had, my mother and father raised me to be the best person. They knew from what little education and knowledge they had how to raise me from what they could, and since a young age I had always learned to respect my elders and to seek wisdom. Wisdom from the Bible is the only wisdom I knew at the time, but unfortunately, like much of my story, people today still suffer that same form of thinking. They're narrow-minded in their beliefs, ignorant in seeking out new information, stubborn in their thinking patterns, and led away from thinking about what other more expansive ideas exist. What does this have to do with Confucius, the Analects, and the philosophy, you might ask, right? It's a good question. It's very simple. Much in the same sense that people are raised to believe in a particular set of morals, values, sets of beliefs, tenets, and they develop various ideological thoughts on the nature of reality through their religion, as with my case of Christianity. We need as individuals to break away from such religious dogma and see wisdom from all around the world. Many people will disagree with my beliefs, I'm sure, and many people will look at it as though my thoughts are incredulous, and the people will look at this, but people don't understand that this podcast seeks to use the wisdom from every philosopher, from every society and culture to better people's lives. And one way to accomplish this is by examining the ideas from these philosophers, in this particular case Confucius, to understand how his wisdom and other wisdom can be applied in our lives on a day-to-day basis from everything we do. Confucius gives an excellent advice in regards to honoring how your parents, and mentions in the 18th century that when a son serves his parents, he may remonstrate or demonstrate with them that even though man may be right, when he sees that his parents don't incline to follow his advice, he still will show an increased degree of reverence and not abandon his purpose. Many times it seems like today we have all the answers, right? We have technologies, we have research, we have libraries full of information, yet people today are still asking the same questions asked thousands of years ago. Why is it that in today's modern technological societies, people are still suffering the same conditions and asking the same questions? What about our nature as human beings that defines us and describes essentially what we are, right? We don't ask the right questions. Oftentimes it appears people all throughout the planet forget to look at the base root of the human condition. What makes us as human beings happy? How can we achieve this happiness? With philosophy, such a question is paramount. And when we look and we observe and we see the 14th chapter, Xian Wan, it speaks about another conversation between a man named Su Lu and the master, where the master tells Xie Lu that if we suppose there's a man with high knowledge, freedom, bravery, and varied propriety, and music, that man he considers as a complete man. He enters into discussion with the philosopher Zhang and discusses about the superior man and the actions in which he himself can achieve whatever is necessary to fulfill his superior nature. The virtuous man for Xiao Kong is free from anxieties, free from perplexities, and free from fear. People ought to recompense injury with justice and kindness with kindness, he says. We ought to cultivate a reverential carefulness. Virtue, he says, is even more important than water or even fire for men. Having died, treading on water and fire. When we live a virtuous life, we cannot die from that virtue. There's also 6 forms of friendships he mentions too that I think are really important to consider. 3 of which being upright and the other 3 being injurious. The 3 being upright being those who are upright, sincere, and have observation. And when you look at your friends, do you see these qualities? Do you see these characteristics in their lives? Because oftentimes it seems as if we can never see these qualities as people within our circles exist or carry these traits. then with the last three qualities injurious, they include finding enjoyment in extravagant pleasure, idleness, sauntering, and feasting. How many people today exemplify this belief system? Everywhere you look in this world, people see extravagance, idleness, feasting, sauntering, and pleasures of all sorts of kinds. Living in the 21st century, it always appears that everything I do and everywhere I travel, there are always people who would rather eat, pleasure seek, and live idly than work and contribute to the world and develop a better society overall. Superior man, according to Zia Kong, is that of having faults where all men see them. The man changes again, and all men look to him. When we observe individuals in society, oftentimes we see that people, especially in the United States, look up to the individual of power and wealth. Individuals idolize those people with power and control over the economies of the world as the single most important people on the planet. Right? Confucius writes that it's important for the individuals to achieve the superior man status. They must turn viewing the ordinances of the heaven, and heaven being the nature of reality in the universe. Men must live within the law of propriety for character. They cannot establish it without it. With what people have today, technology, education, wealth, material possessions, why is it that they can't consider developing one thing that is superior to all such things? Right? Things that exist within their own reality, which is their character. Why is it that people don't want to be good? Give to individuals who are in need, develop themselves as human beings, apart from what external things exist to which they cling to. What is the fundamental drive for human beings, and why is it that far too few people seek to achieve this? We live in a world that is full of distraction. Pain, suffering, turmoil, death, envy, strife, and small and gargantuan dynamics across countries worldwide. Yet, despite all this, the fundamental nature, the characteristics of human beings, from the biological, psychological, and spiritual status, is deterred from blossoming or even growing in our lives. People focus more on the physical, materialistic world rather than opening their hearts and minds to the nature of reality, consciousness, and philosophical implications from both ancient and modern times. I think people in modern society have lost the wisdom from ancient times and the practical philosophy necessary for them to develop an inner sense of understanding and perspective that may one day give them a deeper sense of meaning and purpose within their lives. People simply live boring lives without the chance to ever experience what it is that they desire to seek after, because they are never able to reach forward into the unknown reality that exists before them and develop meaning in their lives. With that, I would like to end this podcast. Thank you so much for listening to the Love of Wisdom podcast. Please follow me on YouTube at the Love of Wisdom. My name is Anthony Pensa. You can find me on Facebook at The Love of Wisdom, Instagram at The Love of Wisdom 424, no spaces. And you could also support me, please, on my Patreon. I'll be uploading more videos on my Patreon account the following week, hopefully. But next week I'll be talking about the famous philosopher, the Chinese philosopher Mencius, and why his philosophy is very important for us to look at in our daily lives. Thank you very much, and have a great day.